So in this video I want to talk about creating certain objects in 3ds Max. Before we start, we need to have a clean slate. In order to do that, you go into File, and if you say Reset, you reset all of these, whatever you've done in the interface. But if you say New, it's gonna create a completely new file. So I don't want to create a completely new file. Instead, I want to reset what I've done here. So I can click Reset. It's gonna say the scene has been modified, save changes. Now I don't want to save any changes, so say don't. Do you really want to reset? Yes, I do. And then everything resets back to the point where I don't have anything in my screen. So now that's done, I can go ahead and start creating objects inside of 3ds Max. So if I go into my command panel, the create panel, and on the create I can go with standard primitives, and in the standard primitives there are a couple of things that I can create. So I'm going to start with a box. So I'm going to click on box. When I hit box, it opens up the parameters of that particular box, and before I change anything I need to go ahead and create that box. So I'm going to go into my viewport, and I'm going to right click on the viewport that I'm using in order to create the box. So I'm going to start with the top viewport. So I'm going to right click here, I'm going to use that viewport in order for me to create the box, and I click anywhere on the screen. So it's not going to be according to scale or any dimension. I'm just going to arbitrarily create a box. So click and just drag my mouse and then release in order to set the base of the box. Now I need to give it a height dimension as well, so I can move my mouse without clicking anywhere, move my mouse, and when I move, you see in the parameters the height aspect changes as well. I can go back and make changes there according to the dimension that we need, but once I have sufficient height for my box, I can click to end that command. So I have my box. I created a box which is 70 something and 72 something, and height is 44 something. These are not units. Well, these are 3ds Max's generic units, and they're not either inches nor centimeters. So these are 3ds Max's generic units, and we'll see in another video how we can change these generic units to whatever units that we want to use. But for now, let's just leave it as it is. These are just generic 3ds Max units, so they don't really make sense right now. But we've created our box. Now if I right click somewhere here and start, let's say I start making another box somewhere here, now we might not be able to get back to the box that we created. So if I go back and select the box here, the properties don't show up the same way that it was previously. So in order for me to change the parameters, I need to go into this modify panel, and then I have the parameters here. So now I can change the parameters. I can change the length of it, I can change the width of it, I can also change the height of it. And there are length segments, width segments, and height segments. If you remember, in SketchUp we had similar segments when we did the cylinder, because the circle is not really a circle, it's made out of small segments. So we saw these segments for, not really as what 3ds Max offers, but we saw some segments. We can change the segments, and you begin to see the segments in the two viewports which have wireframes, where you don't necessarily see the viewports in the perspective view. We can change the segments. More segments that we have, more data that it's gonna be. So it's try to minimize the number of segments that you have. So as you can see, you can change the number of segments. Having segments is important sometimes, because if you want to manipulate the surface of this object, we need to have more segments, and we'll see how we can use polygon editing and how we can use these segments in order to edit an object. Now if you want to see the segments in perspective, what you need to do is you need to press on the F4 key on your keyboard, and that makes it show up in your perspective view as well if you want to see those segments in 3D. So pressing your Alt and your middle mouse scroll button, you can orbit. I'm going to delete that. Similarly, you can create any of the other objects as well. So spheres, cones. You can change certain aspects here, or afterwards you can go here to the modify panel and change those objects. If you click on and go into the standard primitives, extended primitives, you have additional objects like the hedra, so chamfer boxes, you have things like capsules. So there are different objects that you can create in 3ds Max. Whatever you create, you provide visual information using the viewports, and then once you're done, you can go back into the modify panel and then change its parameters afterwards as well. So that's how you create objects within 3ds Max. In the next video, let's talk about how you save things, how you save a file in 3ds Max, and how you create a folder structure for 3ds Max.